So don't leave any of them blank. So this is kind of like a summary of what we did last week. Take a guess. And then we'll work through them together. Oh, that's gross. I'm glad you're not scared of bees. Some people are really scared of bees. Okay, so for question number 1, which one of these is a third degree function? A, B, C, or D? Which one would you say is a third degree? So 3 is an odd number, right? Would you agree that 3 is an odd number? So based off that, we know that it's an odd degree. So which graphs are odd degrees? C and what else? A. Now this is a linear function, so this can't be a third degree. This is linear. It's a straight line. A third degree is going to have a curve to it, so it has to be C. C is the answer. All right, which graph has a negative leading coefficient? There are 2 graphs that have, and if you don't remember, you can look at the definition. A leading coefficient, if it's negative, that means on the right it's going to go down. So which 2 graphs would you select for number 2? B and C. Because B and C are going down on the right. All right. I did tell you this definition, at least I think I did. But looking at a graph, which one has a domain and range of all real numbers? Yeah, what kind of function? Odd degree. There we go. All odd degree functions. Go ahead and write that down. If it's an odd degree, odd degrees mean that the arrows go opposite directions. Then the domain and range will be all real numbers. So there are 2 functions up here that have arrows going opposite ways. So which 2 functions would you select for number 3? C, and then there's another one. A. A and C. They're both odd. Okay, in behavior, as X is positive, Y is positive. So what that means is that on the right, the arrow is going to go up. So there are 2 functions that have in behavior on the right that's positive. So which 2 functions have an in behavior on the right that's positive? A and D. A and D. Good job. See, y'all catching on. A and D. That's the answer to number 4. All right, number 5, no real zeros. So no real zeros means no x-intercepts. That's what that means. So there's only one that doesn't have any x-intercepts. So which one would we pick? B as in boy. Good job. Okay, take out your reveal books. We're on page 223. Now you do need a calculator, like an actual calculator, not a phone, but a calculator. So if there's not a calculator on your desk, get up, walk around, and find one. There's also some in the basket. Okay, there used to be a basket. Okay, there it is. Is there any more in that basket? No, the basket is empty. All right, looking around. Any more oh, I got one here. Anybody still need one? You need one, Brooklyn or Hayden? There you go. Look under your desk, too, because sometimes people put them under the desk. Any calculators under your desk? No? Okay. Well, let's keep moving. Okay, so this is called the location principle. So what this says is that anytime y, so where it says f of x, can you write y? Because f of x is the same as y. So whenever y changes sign, so meaning that it goes from a positive to a negative or from a negative to a positive, there is going to be a 0 between those two x values. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at the table that they gave us. So we have this function here. This is the function. And they already made the table. Now it says that f of x is a fourth degree. See, fourth degree meaning that the highest exponent is 4. That means it will have as many as 4 real zeros. So I want you to write that your degree is the same as or equals the maximum real zeros. So what that means is that if it's a fourth degree function, you can't have more than 4 real zeros. A fourth degree function can only have up to 4. If it's a fourth degree, you can't have 10 x-intercepts. If it's a second degree, you can only have up to 2. You can have less than 2, but you can't have any more than 2. It's the maximum. Okay. So let's look at these y values, because right now we're only focusing on the sign changes. So let's look at this. We're only focusing on the sign changes. So looking at this first one, we're looking at our y values. So we start off, 29 is positive, 3 is positive, 1 is positive, then it switches to a negative, and then it's positive. I'm only looking at the sign. So the first time it changed signs was in between 0 and 1. Does everyone see that? So between 0 and 1, we have an x-intercept. So there's going to be an x-intercept. Let's write this down. Between 0 and 1. And we're not going to actually graph it out. We're just going to write it. So somewhere between 0 and 1. That could be 0.2 or 0.9 or 0.8 or 0.7. Somewhere between 0 and 1, we have an x-intercept. That's our first real zero. All right. Now it changed signs one more time. The second time it changed signs was in between what two numbers? 2 and 3. So does everyone see between these two numbers, we went from negative to positive. So that means we have another x-intercept between 2 and 3. Now we're going to talk about homework in a second. But in your homework, for the first 2 questions, you're going to make a table. And then you're just telling me between what 2 numbers we have sign changes. When does the number change signs? So we're not figuring out the exact value of those x-intercepts because they're decimals. We're trying to figure out approximately where do we have a sign change. All right, so now let's go ahead, go to page 224, and let's figure it out. I guess I'll make it a vertical table this time. So let's make our table. And we're going to start it at -3. And we're going to go to +3. I'm going to change it actually. I'm going to make it horizontal. Okay. Okay. So I need some volunteers to help out because these is 7 different numbers that we need to substitute in. So it says 2x to the 4th, and this is how you type it in. And let me explain to you how to use a calculator, because I know that a lot of us don't know how to put a calculator in. So let me explain, how do you put in a 4th degree? So for those of you who are using the yellow calculators, or even your calculator, look for a key that looks like this. It looks like an upside down V. Now, on the yellow calculators, it's in the first column. It's like the fourth key down, 5th key down. That's how you put in a 4th degree. So I need a volunteer because it would take you a long time to do all 7. So let's work together as a team. Who's going to type in -3? -3 is Marquita. -2 is Kevin. -1 is Dakaya. Who's going to do 0? 0 is Mamadou. 1 is Clinton. 2 is Jeremiah. And 3, I love that this class I have so many volunteers because I don't get a lot of volunteers in my 3rd period. All right, who's going to do 3? One more person, Brooklyn. All right, so go ahead and do that. And when you get your numbers, we're going to fill in our chart. And we do get some big numbers, so I don't want you to think you're wrong. So yeah, that's what I was saying. It's this button. It's in that first column, and it's like right under the pi symbol. Do you see the button that looks like this? Did you find it? Okay, anybody else need help finding that button? Okay. Marquita, did you get a number? What X value did you have? Did you have -3? No, what X value did you put in? That's what I'm asking. Yeah. You okay? And you got 106? Okay. Okay, so now we have our signs. We got our Y values, so let's go ahead and put in our signs. So when we're doing the location principle, we're really focusing on when we have a sign change. So we start off positive, and then this is my first time changing signs. So that means that I'm going to have my first 0 is going to fall between -2 and -1. Because that's the first time I changed. I went from positive to a negative. And then we got a negative, and then we change again to a positive. So between what 2 numbers will be my second 0? Negative, so between what 2 X values, between what 2 X values? 1 and 2. Good job. And that is what you're going to have to do on the homework for the first 2. You're going to make a table and then tell me between what 2 numbers we have our sign changes. Yes. You always do the... Yes. So you pick the X values, and we'll talk about it because I did get your chart started for the homework. And you're going to find the Y values and then look for your sign changes. All right. So the second thing, and this is what the graph looks like. So this is the graph of that last function that we just typed in our numbers for. So this is what the graph of 2x to the 4th plus x cubed minus 3x squared minus 2. So this is what the graph looks like. And you can see that we were right. See how my first x-intercept is somewhere between -1 and -2. Looks like it's a little closer to -2, so it might be like 1.7 or 1.6. We don't know exactly what it is, but we're not focusing on that right now. What we're focusing on is approximately where it is. And then our second x-intercept is between 1 and 2. This one looks like it's a little closer to 1. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is relative max and relative min, or your extrema. So your relative minimum, this occurs when you change from decreasing to increasing. So when we're looking at our Y values, if we have a Y value that's going down, 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 and then all of a sudden it starts to go up, 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 then that means you're going to have a minimum. So right here on this graph, that would be a minimum. So looking at the screen, does everyone see how the little pointer finger, notice how at first it's going down, my finger is going down, and then it starts to go up. So whenever you go from decreasing to increasing, we have a minimum. And then we have a maximum when we change from increasing to decreasing. So on this graph, this point, this blue dot, that would be a maximum. All right, so we got a couple more T-charts we're going to do for today, and then we can start our homework. So our first one is already done for us. So we already have our Y values. So let's look at these Y values. Okay, because on the homework and on your test, you're not going to have the graph. We can look at the graph and easily identify that we have a maximum here and a minimum here. But how can we identify that from a table? So let's look at what's happening. So from our first one, from here to here, what's happening to the numbers? Are the numbers increasing or decreasing? So from -30 to -5, they're doing what? Increasing. So I'm going to write increase. I'm just going to put INC. And then from -5 to -4, -5 to +4, we're still increasing. And then we go from 4 to 3, and that's the first time we start to decrease. So see how we change from increasing to decreasing? That tells me that at -2, because we're changing from increasing to decreasing, and let's go back to our definition. Whenever we change from increase to decrease, we have a maximum. So that tells me that at -2, somewhere near -2, not at -2, but close to -2, there is going to be a maximum. And I want you to emphasize the word near -2. So near -2, we have a maximum because we change from increasing to decreasing. All right, so now let's go back to our chart. So from -3 to from +3 to -2, what's happening? So if you go from +3 to -2, is that an increase or a decrease? A decrease. And then we go from -2 to -5. What is that? Is that an increase or a decrease? Are you all saying decrease? Okay. And then we go from -5 to 0. What's happening there? Increase. And then here we increase again. So again, somewhere near, because this is where we change. See, we change from a decrease to an increase somewhere near 1. So at 1 or close to 1. Because when you change from decreasing to increasing, that's a minimum. So somewhere near 1, we have a minimum. Now, we do have a graph, but you won't have a graph on the homework, so you can see it that here, which is near -2, it's not at -2, but it is near -2, we do have a maximum. And then near 1, we do have a minimum. All right, so we got one more question, and then we'll be finished for today. We need some volunteers to fill in our chart. I think we're still on page 224. We got to check. Or it might be on page 225. It's on page 225. So let's go ahead and fill in our chart. I need some volunteers to help fill in these numbers. So let me go ahead and write it out. This is our function. So when you type it in your calculator, you have negative, and then you have parentheses to the power 4, minus x to the power 3, plus 5x squared, plus x minus 3. Okay, so who's going to do -3? Kevin. -2, Clinton. -1, Mamadou. 0, Marquita. +1. Brooklyn. +2. Jeremiah, and then +3. Last one. Might as well be you, Brooklyn. Be the other Brooklyn. Okay. Let's go ahead, fill in our chart, and then we can start our homework. I appreciate the volunteers, because if not, you will have to do all 7 numbers by yourself. Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, so now let's do our increasing and decreasing. Let's write it off to the side. So between these two numbers, between the first two, -15 and 7, are these numbers going up or down at first? Up. So I'm going to say they're increasing. And then from 7 to 1, what happened? Decrease. So that's my first change. So I changed from an increase to a decrease. So somewhere near -2, do we call that a maximum or a minimum when we change from increasing to decreasing? Let's go back a couple slides. So increasing to decreasing, is that a maximum or a minimum? It's a maximum. So our first place is -2. So at -2, somewhere near -2. It's not exactly at -2. Emphasis on the word near -2. We're going to have a maximum. All right. So then we go from 1 to -3. So when you go from 1 to -3, are we going up or down? So that's a decrease. And then we go from -3 to 1, and that is a increase. So we go from a decrease to an increase. So that means somewhere near 0, we're going to have a what? A max or a min? Min. So somewhere near 0, we're going to have a minimum. And then we go from 1 to -5. And 1 to -5, that is a decrease. So that tells us that somewhere near 1, we have our second maximum. And that is what you're going to have to do in your homework. So now let's talk about our homework. Okay, so this is homework 23. These are your questions that you have to do. And I wrote the table on the board. So for question number 1, you want to make a table starting at -4 and going to +1. You're going to find your y values. Now for these two questions, you're looking for a sign change. For numbers 1 and 3, you're looking for your sign change, because a sign change tells us where we have a 0. So I want you to look at example 1. But for numbers 5 and 7, you want to see where does it change from increase to decrease, or decrease to increase. And those are the 4 questions that you should be working on now. So to help you out a little bit on the test, we will give you the X values. So for number 1, you want your T-chart to start at -4 and go to 1. For number 3, focus on X values between -7 and -3, like I have on the board. For number 5, focus on your X values between -1 and +5. And number 7, from -2 to 2. So go ahead, take a minute and start filling in your T-charts now while you all have calculators. And then that's it.